Friends, I'm just going to basically do a brief version of the Facebook Live I just did in Hindi. Today, we are talking about something extremely tragic. Because of the coronavirus 19, COVID 19 lockdown, there has been at least one hunger death in Bhojpur in Bihar, in a Dalit hamlet of the Musahar community. And this was an 11-year-old child called Rakesh Musahar, or he was also called Rahul at home. So Rakesh or Rahul, he died, and he died because his parents were, because of the lockdown, unable to earn enough to feed the family and unable to earn enough to get him the medicine that he needed when he fell sick. And this is an extremely tragic and really condemnable situation. And we should talk about it because it is hardly an isolated instance. It's just one instance that we have come to know about, right? Because there are Cpiml activists in the area who could reach the place, who could reach out and get the community some help. That is why we could get to know about it. But there are so many other instances that must be happening all over the country, which we know so little about. In this particular instance, I just spoke to Comrade Jawahar, who is our party's secretary in the area and Central Committee member of Cpiml, and I also spoke to a ward parshad of ours called Comrade Satyadev Ram. And what Comrade Jawahar tells me is that he told me not only about this case but about several other worrying things which I would like to discuss. He told me that this family was a family that used to earn by collecting scraps and selling scraps to a scrap dealer. And so what happened after the 22nd was that because of the lockdown, the scrap dealer closed shop, and they also could not go out to collect scraps. And he used the word, literally, Comrade Satyadev used the words hand to mouth to describe how this family lived. So they said that you had to work with your hands today and then you could feed your mouth the same day. That was what the situation of this family was. The father of this boy, Durga Musahar, father's name is Durga Musahar. Durga Musahar sometimes also did work, during the Dasera peak season and so on. He would do work of loading, bearing loads, picking up loads for shops. But naturally, because most of the shops are closed also, he could not do that. So from the 22nd till now, he could hardly earn anything. In all these days, maybe once or twice he managed to get some small work and get a little bit of money, and then maybe they would eat one meal. But largely they were going hungry. And this child fell sick on the 24th. He had fever. And they did take him to show a doctor. They took him to a hospital, but the medicines that were required they could not pay for. And so they could neither pay for food nor they could pay for medicines, and then this child basically lost his life in the process. Now, the issues that are raised here is, the first thing is that the rations are not being delivered to the homes, right? Rations are not reaching homes. Whatever relief package has been announced by the government and so on, this is not much use for Durga Musahar and his family. And it is and also it says such a lot about your health system as well. Actually, I didn't make this point in the Hindi video. I should have, which is that the health situation, that if you take your child, if a poor family takes their child to a hospital, then they are in order to pay for medicine, they have to pay for the medicines. They have to pay 500 rupees or 1000 rupees for medicines, which they don't have. So you do not have free public health care in this country, especially in rural India. It's just not there. And so this child, whose life need not have been lost, this child, just imagine what his life was like. He used to work with his mother to collect scraps and to sell to the scrap dealer. And this child is now no more. Now, what Comrade Jawahar also told me was that even after having been informed about this in advance, before this incident happened, as well as after the incident happened, the local police and administration have not, offered any kind of help. They have not come to give any kind of compensation to the family, and they have not come to give any relief to that hamlet either. In fact, it is our Cpiml comrades who have somehow managed to get rations, collect rations from here and there, from and distribute them in this particular village, 35 families. But you know, it is really it is really the task of the government to do this, and it is not doing so. The other thing that Comrade Jawahar told me, two other points which were very, very concerning. One was that he said that there is a situation where, you know, just like in demonetization, the rules are being changed every other hour. So people are being kept in a permanent state of uncertainty and a state of fear and terror. So, for instance, suddenly and at the end of the day, they let them go, saying, "Okay, you don't have fever, you can go." Well, if that's all you had to do, they didn't have fever. You could have checked their temperature and let them go, no, immediately. Why did you have to keep them all cooped up there? If one of them was sick, if one of them did have the virus, then all of them who were cooped up there probably, are in danger of having gotten the virus also, right? So it makes no sense even from the point of view of the so-called necessary restrictions, necessary evils that we need in order to combat the coronavirus, COVID-19, right? So in no way is this helping. And the kind of fear and terror, if people have to live in fear of quarantines and live in fear of the police, then naturally they will avoid going there. They're going to avoid heading, taking help. So, for instance, Comrade Jawahar told me about one young man who came from some other state, migrant worker, and he was having a fever. So, there was this buzz of discussion and fear around him, around the place where he lived. And so, our own comrade reached out to the DM and said that, look, there is somebody who's turned up who's ill. So, you please do arrange for quarantine for them, and if possible, for testing for them and for treatment for them. So, he did the responsible thing. But then, when the authorities arrived at the door of this household to take this young man, then take him into quarantine. Then his parents rebelled. His parents were terribly afraid. They said, we are not going to let our child go to jail. We are not going to let our child go to a detention camp. We are afraid, and you can't take our child off at night and so on. And they actually didn't allow the authorities to take him that night. The next morning, our comrades went there. They spoke to the family. They explained to this young man and to his family how necessary it was, how quarantine is necessary, and they promised that he would be taken care of, and that they would ensure that the authorities treated him well in the place and treated him with some basic human dignity. And only then did the family agree to allow him to go to quarantine. The point is that this is a work that has to be done. If only our comrades are left doing it, then naturally you're not ensuring that each person gets this information, gets this reassurance, and gets the kind of human touch and human dignity that you need in order to cope with this virus, and in order to make sure that everyone is able to cope with it, and that they look upon the administration as a friend in this terrible circumstance and not as something to fear, right? The last thing I want to say is look at the kind of conduct of the BJP leaders. So you have one BJP minister, Prakash Javadekar, who tweets out photos of himself watching the serial Ramayana sitting at home. Okay, it's complete callousness. There's another BJP MP, Balbir Punj, who tweeted out a series of tweets saying, in a sense, that migrant workers are irresponsible and they're just crowding the highways and walking so many kilometers home, not because they are desperate for food and water. He actually says this, that when they go to the villages, it's not as though they're going to get food and water there. And he adds that, they're doing it only because they want to enjoy their holiday, their chutti. They want to enjoy their holidays with their family, and which is why they're going home. And they ought to be locked up. You have the film actor Rishi Kapoor saying, we need an emergency because we need to ensure that these people don't, flock on the roads and walk out on the roads defying the police. Look at it. I mean, it's like Marie Antoinette saying to the people of France, to the poor of France who were rioting for bread, that, why are they asking for bread? Can't they eat cake if there's no bread? It's exactly like that. I mean, these people can't sit at home. They don't have a home to sit at home and watch Ramayana. They cannot watch serials. They are out there walking with their little children, without water, without food, because they're desperate to save their lives. Because if they are not able to earn in the city, you have not provided them with rations and with any kind of circumstances, and which is why they're having to go home in these desperate circumstances. And so I'll end here by repeating what I said yesterday, which is that as citizens, our task is to ask questions. Asking questions is literally our job as citizens. Those who are saying, why don't you do something? Those who are defending the government, every time we raise something that needs doing, they're saying, why don't you do something? So AICCTU comrades, our trade union comrades, our party comrades have been busy the last few days, night and day, trying to help migrant workers and other, people in distress and duress. And many times when they have called up administrative or political leaders, then they have been told, you're not the one who's elected. Why you meddling? This is not your business. Keep quiet. But no, it is our business. It is our job as citizens to do this. We are very happy to volunteer for any help that the administration may need. We're happy to do that. But don't tell us that it is not our job to talk about what's happening. Don't tell us it's our job to simply blindly support whatever government is doing, no matter how Tughlaqian the measure, no matter how crazy the measure is and how devastating and how destructive the measure is. No, it's not our job to do that. It's our job to ask questions right now, and asking questions makes things better. When I was doing the Hindi Facebook Live, somebody commented there saying, report this video to Facebook. Well, you could do that, sure, and you could get the video taken down, sure. That's exactly how China responded when their doctor first warned people about COVID-19. They locked him up, they accused him of rumor mongering, and well, he died and the virus didn't stop, and here we all are today, right? So the point is that, the Chinese authorities went around trying to delete Facebook posts that were critical of the government. No, criticism of the government helps in this and in every situation, a government, in a democracy, should welcome criticism, because it is through criticism is a form of cooperation. It is through that we can actually, physical distancing is necessary, but you don't need to be suspicious of others, you don't need to hate others, and you certainly do not need to you certainly do need to help every person in the society, in our country, in the world, to survive this crisis, and to hold the authorities, especially our government and our country, accountable to ensuring that people get the relief, the treatment, everything that they need. And once again, I'll repeat that the time of this lockdown, and the time before this, so the preparation time from January 30th till now, which the government had, they should have spent it to stockpile masks, to stockpile sanitizer, to stockpile equipment that they would need, and to equip themselves with enough testing capacities. They have not done that. India has one of the lowest testing, India is doing the least testing in the world right now. And which is why your numbers are low, because you're not testing. Greater testing will inevitably mean that your numbers will be higher, but that's a good thing, because then you're able to locate who are the people who are ill. You're not living in a fool's paradise telling yourself that the numbers are low. You're actually realizing which are the people who are ill, which are the people who need isolation, need treatment, and you're doing this in a humane way. The failure to do this will be remembered in history as a crime. The failure to crime of this government, the failure to provide for the poorest in our country, for the migrant workers, for the Dalit localities, for the daily wagers, for the rag pickers, for the sex workers, the failure to provide for these absolutely the poorest and most vulnerable in our society. And in a country like India, they're actually the majority, they're not a minority. And to only cater to the middle class, which is sitting at home, and giving them Ramayana to watch, that is something which will be remembered by history as a crime of the Modi regime.